Hello, Kane.
Hello, Ben.
Hello. How are
How are
you
you?
doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, totally fine. Totally fine. Happy to
Third
be
time's a
speaking to
charm.
you. Third time's a charm. Yes, we have had a few technical glitches, but now feels safe. Touch wood.
Yeah.
Everything feels
Touch
good.
wood.
Yeah, yeah, totally. So, uh, people may be wondering why I'm inside a giant cake. I guess we should tell them.
Yes.
This, yeah. So I'm interviewing the man who usually does the interviews because we're celebrating 5 years of VUX World.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Can you believe
Woo!
it? Five
That's
years.
amazing.
Yeah. Yeah.
How's
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
feel?
It feels good. It feels very good. It's been a labor of love at times, the podcast, because it's very difficult, as you've probably found out over the last sort of couple of months, to maintain a cadence, and to everything that goes on behind the scenes of running a podcast is, a lot of people don't sort of privy to it, sort of thing. And
Uh,
so to sort of do it, there's been a few weeks off. There was one year, I think maybe it's 2020, where things were really busy for like the summer. So we had like a month where we didn't have any podcasts. But
mhm.
apart from that, it's been at least once a week pretty much for 5 years, which has been, yeah, incredible. Absolutely incredible.
That is incredible. Is it? It's like 200 episodes. Am I right? Or in that region?
I think there's something like 250 odd in
Yeah.
total.
Well, that would make
Yeah.
sense. 5 years, 52
Yeah.
weeks in a year. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
maths is
250,
shaky.
260. No, the Apple Podcasts lets you see how many episodes there is. I don't tend to
Uh,
count the episodes. Some podcasts generally will say this is episode XYZ. I've never really done that. I've never really
uh,
sort of been counting, but I did look on February the 12th when it was actually 5 years on Apple, and it's something like 256 or something like that. Yeah. So it's very
that's
close to one episode per week for 5 years.
Yeah, totally. So 256 hours with 256 different guests. That's a
Yeah.
lot of information.
It is. It is, yeah, it is. I've probably forgot 99% of it. I hope I
Well,
haven't.
no, I mean, if you have, then it's maybe not such a bad thing because we need to filter stuff, right? We need to pick out the best bits because that's what we're all doing, sort of cherry
Yeah,
picking the best information to get better, right?
absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And the most of the guests, the vast, vast majority, have been absolutely fantastic. There's only been a handful, which you're bound to get after 250 conversations. There's been a small handful where the conversation was maybe a little bit difficult, or
Uh,
the guest was probably maybe more cagey than others. There's been one or two where you know I think the guest didn't necessarily shine brand new information on things, for example, or perhaps weren't maybe as experienced as they were led to sort of believe. But
yeah.
that's like a very small handful. The vast majority of all the conversations have been absolutely unbelievable. Like I can't believe that firstly, people are willing to spend their time with us to chat about this stuff is
Yep.
phenomenal, really, because everyone's so busy. Just to get an hour of someone's time is very difficult to do. So I'm really thankful that people are willing to dedicate their time.
Uh,
Um, and yeah, it's been the enabler of everything that we do today, basically. Which is crazy.
no, it's totally brilliant. It's sort of, I was actually thinking about this the other day that maybe it's not so ironic that starting a conversational AI consultancy begins with lots and lots of conversations.
Yeah, yeah,
You
it
know,
is. Yeah, that's fundamentally what it is. Yeah,
yeah, totally, because that's the core of it. Like being a good conversationalist, being able to understand how to, you know, lead people towards conclusions, like getting their views and things. That's basically what we're trying to get AI to do. I know I'm being
yeah,
extremely general, but having an idea of how to hold a conversation is fundamental to what we're doing, right?
yeah, absolutely. And I think doing a podcast generally makes you, even if it's not a conscious thing, over time, it actually does make you a little bit better at having conversations.
Hmm.
Because and fundamentally, the I think for me at least anyway, the biggest sort of skill I think I've learned from doing the podcast for 5 years, which is inherently applicable to conversational AI, only in a different way,
Aye.
is listening.
Yep.
That's the
Yep.
biggest. That's all you need to do, really. It's actually pretty simple. You just need to listen and really like dial into what's being said.
Yeah.
And as long as you're listening, whatever comes next is inherently going to be related, and you probe into areas that interest you, and then you just sit and listen again. It's actually fairly, it's tiring, but it's an easy thing to do. Really, is just to listen. And for conversational AI applications, that's if they're not listening and they're not able to understand, that's fundamentally a broken system, isn't it? Like that's mainly the only job, or half of the job, is listening and understanding.
Mhm. Well, that's a great insight. I think I've got everything I wanted to ask you about. Done.
Goodbye then.
But no,
You're not going to give
totally.
me any cake. You've got some cake behind you there. I was hoping for a
No,
little slice of cake.
it's just digital cake. It's just there to tease us and then not actually give us that satisfaction. But no, totally like that's a totally great insight, and I think that really is it. It's like listening, paying attention, and understanding. Yeah. Um.
What, say that again. I missed that.
Oh, sorry.
I'm joking.
You only got me because we were having those technical glitches, and I
I
was
know.
suddenly like, "Oh crap, has it happened again?" Good one. Good
Yeah,
one.
that was good. The dad jokes are always the best.
They are
I'm a dad, so I can actually get away with dad jokes now. I've
No,
got an excuse.
absolutely. Yeah, and I was actually gonna add that in that, listening and paying attention as parents, it's like, sometimes you have to really listen and be patient even when you're, I don't know, getting kicked or punched or
Yeah, that's
something
it.
by little
Absolutely.
hands and feet. And it really trains you to listen even when you're feeling like you're not sure if you actually want to.
Absolutely. And patience, it definitely develops patience.
Yeah.
Um, which again, I think is important. If you want it, I don't think this is too much of a stretch, but from a conversation AI point of view, there's a temptation and a feeling, I think, from businesses that this thing is a very quick thing, a quick turnaround thing that you can deliver in
Yeah.
a week, and all of a sudden all your problems will be solved. But actually, it does require a great deal of patience and a great deal of persistence, because 90% of the time on day one, you're going to figure out that all of the assumptions that you had have been challenged by the unpredictability of how people actually respond to kind of prompts. And so being patient enough to build out a kind of optimization roadmap and having the dedication to stick with it is where all of the success comes from, basically.
Aye, totally, totally. And just to add on to that, like a different viewpoint, the bot has no patience. Like you teach a
Mm,
bot to solve a problem, and it's just going to keep trying to solve that problem over and over again. So, it's like thinking about how the relationship is between bot and user. It's always just looking for the problem to solve that it's been trained on, and
mm,
never approaching it from a sort of patient, like, do I really understand this? Like, do it, how deeply have I considered this? It's like it's
mm,
only up to us to train those bots to be able to understand people, and because as soon as they're in there, they're just rapidly trying to solve stuff, right?
exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to give you 30 seconds go. We,
Okay.
we've kind of, I
I
mean,
like that.
we've basically warmed up already because I usually put this in there to get the interviewees warmed up, and we're kind of there. But I've prepared a few that I really want to get your opinions on. So
All right.
you've got 30 seconds for each of these, and as you're
Yeah.
my boss, I'm not going to mark you down if you go over.
I'll do my absolute best.
Yeah, and the first, well, this is going to be fun. So. And context for anyone who doesn't know, and I think everybody who watches VUX World and all of your videos knows already, but Winston is Kane's dog. So, Kane, when Winston takes you for walkies, is he
Yeah.
feeding you the lines that you say to camera?
He is actually. He's a little muse, Winston, and he we have long, deep conversations about this stuff, about content strategy, about specific kind of creative angles, and all that lot. The thing about Winston, sometimes you might notice, is that he's speaking of patience. Winston is a very impatient dog,
Aye.
um, and he really just wants to kind of get somewhere. You know,
Okay.
Winston doesn't kind of enjoy a stroll. He really has somewhere to be, even if that place
Uh-huh.
to be ultimately is back at the house.
I get you. I get you.
And so sometimes, what's funny, I quite laugh sometimes. If you watch some of the videos, you'll see every now and then there'll be me like a bit of a jolt forward kind of thing, and it's Winston's just got a scent and he's just off. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it definitely has a big impact on them videos, and they wouldn't be the same without him because everyone that watches them always comments on Winston. So it's like
Yeah.
the videos, in part, you know, aside from the nonsense I tend to spout, the videos are really just about documenting Winston's walks.
Well, sure. Yeah. I guess that's like a subplot, really.
Yeah, it's a subplot. Yeah, the journey of
Yeah.
Winston. Yeah,
The journey of Winston. But yeah, he seems like an amazing dog. Maybe one day I'll get to meet him. I've only seen him on
yeah.
video and photo.
I know, I know. I don't tend to take him to events and stuff like that because not everywhere is dog friendly, Ben, as you might
That's
imagine.
true. That's true. And yeah, it's one of those challenges of life that maybe conversational AI can't help. Anyway, we're way over 30 seconds for that, but good answer. So now let's get a bit more serious. So 5 years of VUX World. What surprised you the most about the industry when you started VUX World?
um, I was honestly, I was surprised that there was even an industry and there was even a community of things going on. Like that was the actually on day one the most surprising thing. I remember buying the domain name in June 2017, and that was after I think I actually saw an advert for Alexa. I hadn't even interacted with an Amazon device yet. I just saw an advert somewhere,
Hmm.
and I thought to myself, for some, obviously, you know my background, very similar to yours, music production, and you know, user experience design and writing and stuff like that. And as soon as I kind of saw this advert, I thought, what's going on here? Like someone's talking to a device, therefore there's a experiential kind of angle to this, whatever this thing is. That someone's having some kind of experience with this device, and there's a writing element involved inherently because this thing is talking back, and it's not doesn't sound to me as though it's like just making up stuff. It's like it's answering questions, and then at the same time it's audio, and so there has to be a way of thinking about how you craft that experience using audio. And immediately I thought to myself, if you could create things for this device, it would be absolutely amazing. And I
Yeah.
just remember thinking, this is all just seeing like a 10-second advert, and all this stuff's going on in my head. Like, imagine being able to create experiences where people are able to have a conversation with the application that you've built or the business that you are, and in the course of that conversation you're able to craft an experience that is a voice only experience. I thought that'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
Voice, it would be like a voice user experience, VUX. And I thought straight away, I'm going to VUX World. That's a an idea for a podcast that will explore this stuff, the ability to create voice user experiences for these kind of devices. And I registered the domain name, and then nothing happened for about 6 months because I
Okay.
couldn't find anybody that was doing it. And I didn't even know at the time, as I said, I didn't know you could do it. So the first 3 months after registering the domain name was me just investigating this Alexa platform. Like, what is it? It wasn't. I think it had just launched in the UK, and so I ended up kind of having a couple of conversations with people over the next few months and stuff like that. And then eventually, I think in sort of like, I think it must have been November, I discovered the VoiceBot podcast and the This Week in Voice podcast, and that was the most surprising thing. Was that there's actually people that I think the This Week in Voice podcast launched pretty much when I bought the domain name. VoiceBot, I think, had been publishing articles for about a year. Maybe as the podcast launched a couple of months prior, and that was the most surprising thing. It was like, actually, there's people that do this thing, and then
Yeah.
that's kind of what I thought. Well, you know, this week in voice is news. VoiceBot is kind of news and industry sort of like analysis kind of stuff. There's nothing around which actually gets into how do you do it? What's the practical realities of doing it? And then that's where it sort of came from. So yeah, the most surprising thing was it's actually a thing.
Yeah. I get you. I get you. And it sounds like the timing was incredible. You,
It
you,
well, yeah, it seems that way. Yeah, 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 yeah. The timing of the answer to that question wasn't because it was well longer than 30 seconds. But yeah, the, the timing was great. And what's interesting is that at the time, I remember saying to myself, like before that, I'd done loads of different things, and I'd always, you know, dotted around and from design to writing to various different business ideas and all this kind of stuff. And I'd tried, I would say, between 10 and 15 different types of things that were the aim was to sort of create a business from it. And
Hmm.
with this, I thought to myself, there was no question for me in November when I first started recording the first episodes of the podcast. There was no question at all that this is going to be a thing. How big it will be, who knows, but it's definitely going to be a thing. And so I said to myself, I'm just going to give myself 3 years. I'm not going to do any other writing. I'm not going to do any other web design jobs. I'm not going to work for anyone else doing anything else. I'm going to keep this job I've got now, and I'm just going to use that to pay the bills. And I'm going to throw everything into this other thing for 3 years and see where it goes. And so it turns out that in hindsight, the timing was great. Um, but at the time, I always knew it would be something. I just didn't know exactly what the industry would become, basically.
Yeah, totally, totally. And um, one thing that I'm just thinking is that, I remember the early episodes. There was one in particular, it was Ilana Mayer and Brian Bauman, I think. I think
Mm-hmm.
Ilana had a different surname at the time.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
remember listening to that. It was like my first days as a conversation designer and
yeah.
listening to that. And it was really very helpful to me to get an understanding of the industry. And you must have had so many other people contacting you like, wow, this has really helped me to get started.
Yeah, and still to this day, students and stuff like that add me on LinkedIn, and they're trying to figure out how to get into this sort of industry and what that looks like. That episode itself was actually my first days as a VUI designer, if you remember,
Yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
the term conversation designer wasn't really a term. What was
Aye.
interesting is that VUX as a name was obviously intended to be voice user experience. And at the time in June 2017, there was only two mentions of this word on Twitter that I found after I'd registered the domain name. So it wasn't really a term that was very well used. And
Yeah.
if you remember, there was the whole concept of VUI design existed from the IVR days, the old nuance days, and stuff like that. Um, Conversation design didn't really exist. And as we've noticed, sort of like with voice assistants essentially being underpinned by the same fundamental technology as chatbots
Mhm.
and or any other conversational kind of assistant, the term kind of VUI design has become less relevant because if you're designing for voice, you can just as well design for chat or messaging. And so this term conversation design kind of came and arose probably in like 2018, 2019. But yeah, that first episode was VUI, my first days as a VUI designer, I believe.
Mhm. Yeah, 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 totally, totally. It was a great one. It was a great one. Um, you're kind of like you're answering so many of the questions that I've got here in different bits, but there's one more 30 seconds ago I want to give you just to see what you say. And like, what is like the first words that jump into your head when I say artificial intelligence?
Ooh. The words customer experience, business transformation, and the words that instinctively come to mind is future, but I don't think that necessarily applies because the future is right now, basically. Um, but yeah, customer experience, business transformation, change, future. Those are kind of the things that pop up.
Yeah, I totally get you. Totally get you. And I guess with the future thing, it's like, we're using it, it's in the present, but you can see how it's still got development to happen, right? Like leading
Mm,
way off into the future. So it's both. It's not
yeah,
like what we have in the present is the end story. It's
yeah,
it's got a lot of future.
yeah. In many cases, people kind of. I remember in the kind of early days of Alexa and stuff like that, people used to say that where we are now, if you compared it to the web, is we're in the kind of HTML phase
Yeah.
where we're building the building blocks of the website using HTML and inline CSS to put some colors and stuff like that in there. Whereas what we really need is JavaScript, for example, that will allow us to do more and stuff like that, and a whole bunch of other technologies that have made kind of mobile applications prevalent and stuff. And so it's kind of like I think that was the case. We had the raw tools there, which was kind of like the NLU, and
Yeah.
then as you sort of go over the next few years, you've got other tools that have come around for NLU management, stuff like that, conversation design, and all that lot. And then maybe the equivalent of JavaScript may end up being large language models, which
Mhm.
then starts to change from more basic HTML web pages into more interactive mobile first applications. That's maybe the analogy I would sort of draw, perhaps.
Hmm.
Although the jury is obviously still out on all of this kind of stuff. But you're right, you can see that today, compared to where we were 5 years ago, it's very different in terms of technology capabilities, very different in terms of proven use cases and business value that's being generated, very different in terms of best practice, in terms of how to do this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
has definitely evolved. And we can see the like things that need to be improved, or kind of like paths towards that kind of future, if you like, which is, it's nice to be able to, usually, obviously, you don't know what's going on. Nobody expected ChatGPT to kind of, really galvanize everybody basically around the topic of AI. So you don't really know what's going to happen, but you can see that there's ways or steps to be taken to make things better, sort of thing,
Hmm. Hmm.
which is good because it's something to work towards, isn't it?
Yeah, totally, totally. And so to ground that, thinking of VUX World, like, there's been a lot of evolution within the 5 years that you've been doing this. Can you
Mm.
give a sort of summary of what you've seen happening that's led us to this point in the
Yeah.
time that you've been interviewing people and researching the industry and writing about it?
Yeah, so I would say that in 2017, 2018, 19, and 20, what you had was kind of two different communities that were totally disconnected beginning to emerge. One was the voice assistant community of people building Alexa skills and Google Actions and stuff like that, really interested in uh, the future of these kind of inanimate devices that you can talk to.
Aye.
And then the other was the community that was kind of spurred off the back of Facebook opening its Messenger platform to be able to have conversations in there, which kind of kicked off that first wave of chatbots. Basically, chatbots kind of existed prior to 2016, 2017, but that was the real sort of enablement of website chat and Messenger sort of chat. And so
For
you
the
had like
masses.
chatbot, yeah, yeah. So you had chatbot developers that were doing their thing, and then you had kind of like the voice community that was doing its thing. And VUX World at the beginning was really focusing on those voice assistants and voice technology in general. Um, and then I think what I realized and observed very quickly when you start really getting into it and you start really kind of peeling back the layers of the onion is you realize that what is the kind of commonalities here? Well, the commonalities is one, it's conversational, and
Mhm.
so it doesn't matter if it's text or voice. The premise is that you're having a conversation, and then underneath it, the natural language component is the kind of key enabler of all of this stuff. There's no, I mean, speech recognition is useful on its own, as is being proven for lots of different use cases. But from a conversational AI point of view and automating conversations, you really need the NLU part to make anything happen. So those two worlds began to sort of collide. I would say in maybe 2019, 2020, perhaps. And that's kind of what VOX started to do, is looking more at some chat use cases. And
Mhm.
I remember the first few episodes I did, I can't remember exactly who it was with, but I remember the first few episodes that I did that was looking at chat, and it felt a bit strange. I was thinking, like, is people who are listening to VOX World really going to be interested in chat? Like, for me, it was a case of it's common. The commonality is NLU. Really, what we should be exploring is NLU, because that's the enabler of all of this stuff. And so
Yep.
VOX World kind of went from looking at purely voice to looking at voice and chat in all of its guises. And then the second thing rather that changed probably in 2020 is that my background is in sort of digital service design, digital transformation, organizational change, and implemented new technologies that transform the way businesses operate to deliver new services, to deliver new products in innovative ways. And so it was weird because that was my background for almost a decade prior to discovering Alexa and starting VOX World.
Mhm.
Um, Yet all of the use cases that were coming around with Alexa and this, that, and the other were all marketing based use cases. Now I've got a marketing degree. I've worked at marketing agencies, so I have that in me, and so that's kind of, I was gravitating towards that, and that was fine. But deep down, I was thinking the real power of this technology really is to transform the way businesses operate,
Mhm.
transform the way businesses deliver services to customers, transform that customer experience and reduce that friction so that people can get done whatever they need to get done from wherever they are on any device, and it's all frictionless. Um, and so in late 2019, I started sort of looking more into how can businesses use this properly. How
Yeah.
can they use it to automate conversations, to automate processes, to streamline processes? And so I started looking at the contact center and the call center as a way of doing that. And so I started covering that a lot more in 2020. And then what ended up happening is in 2020, I think, or 2021, I did a poll on LinkedIn and I asked, um, where do you think the most opportunity is for voice
Yeah.
automation, voice AI? And I give a four options: Alexa and Google Assistant and voice assistants, contact center, call center, uh, kind of apps and websites, or something else. And in 2021, Alexa was by far and away the most voted for thing on that poll. I did the same thing last week, and call center absolutely blows every other option out of the water by about 70% of the 250 odd people that voted think the opportunities are there. And
That's
so,
incredible.
which is crazy. Yeah. So that's the thing that's changed in the
Yeah.
last, since we started covering it and started working on it in 2020. It seems as though the rest of the world has woken up to it. And that seems to be where all of this energy is being placed now, is how can
Mhm.
we use natural language processing technologies to make businesses more efficient, to make people more efficient, and to make experiences better for customers. And that's
Yeah.
basically where we focus most of our time now. We still look at all of the other stuff, all of the consumer stuff, the marketing stuff, all of that kind of stuff is still part of what we cover, obviously, as you know. But our kind of core activity from a business point of view is in that kind of business transformation space.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think it's kind of, it feels like quite an obvious place to use this incredibly powerful technology to apply it to the call center, which doesn't mean that that's the only place that's going to be innovated. You know, it's like
Yeah,
that's a great place to do it now and probably forevermore. But as well, this technology can be used in many other places, right? Some which are
yeah,
still yet to be found.
of course. I think what we'll see is that um, the challenge with Alexa and Google Assistant and those platforms is that they're third party platforms and that you don't have any control really over the customer experience because you don't get enough data from the platforms to be able to properly craft an experience.
Uh,
We know how important data is, customer data to be able to drive conversations, and then the flexibility to be able to build whatever features you need to build in order to bring the experience that you need.
yeah.
And those platforms are really prohibitive in doing that. And so a lot of companies were hesitant to go ahead with Alexa and Google Assistant for those reasons, and also for IP reasons. Like, do we really want to have Amazon collecting our data and doing all this kind of stuff? And so there was a hesitancy there. Um, the difference here is that when you look at kind of enterprise use cases, you're automating chat conversations, email conversations, messaging conversations, internal conversations within the business, voice conversations. What it ends up doing is a business can generate its own IP based on the conversations that it has with its customers and generate its own kind of. And I remember having this conversation with Matt, I forget his name. He was from BetaWorks, which was an investment company, and he spoke about in 2018. He spoke about how Uber is a brain, and
Hmm.
what Uber does basically is Uber has this brain that can pair people that need a lift with people who can give them a lift, and the mechanisms that sit inside of Uber are completely channel independent.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter whether you order it on your watch, whether you order it on a website, whether you order it on the app. It doesn't really matter to Uber because what matters is the brain that they've built.
Hmm.
And this is what we're trying to encourage, and where businesses in some cases are getting to, is that they've understood that in creating conversational AI conversations and automating conversations with customers, they're in the process of building a brain,
Yeah.
a brain for their company. And if you can build that brain properly and you can have effective conversations that add value to the business, then you can have that conversation principally on any channel. Now, the interaction will change, your language model might change depending on what channels you deploy it on, but fundamentally, the rules and the logic behind the conversation patterns, the business rules and the process will all stay the same. And so, as you've built this brain, and you're able to have conversations on WhatsApp or Facebook or Google My Business or on a chatbot on your website or in your call center, you're then able to be a lot more flexible in terms of where you put that conversation to be had. And what I think we'll see, getting around to that where I started, what I think we'll see is in time, if Alexa can hang around long enough and still be used and still get adopted and adoption increases, I think we'll start to see businesses eventually saying, hmm, we've already got this brain here that can have conversations on any channels. Why don't we stick it on Alexa? Why don't we make this available through Serens so that people in the cars can have conversations with it? Why don't we make this available on other websites potentially? Like, we'll link into other websites that have chatbots that are adjacent to ours, but we've got relevant services we can hook into that. And all of a sudden, I think we'll start to see that sort of the thing we've been talking about for half a decade now, which is this ambient computing platform where you can get anything done from anywhere you are at any
Yeah.
point in time. It's just a longer journey than I thought it would be.
Yeah, totally, totally. What you're talking about is making me think of what we're saying at the start with listening, that, essentially companies need this brain, which is basically listening to all the conversations and routing them as required, having the ability to, as we can, like, listen to stuff and then analyze what's the best thing to do with what they're hearing and
Hmm.
connecting people to the right things.
Yeah,
And definitely, yeah, with Alexa, it's maybe the timing just wasn't quite right, but the advances it's made has been incredible. I think it's what's happened with Alexa and Google Assistant, to a certain extent. You could say that's kind of built a lot of the industry that we're looking at now, right? Even though
definitely.
the focus may have shifted.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there's a lot of people right now that are kind of working in this thing full time because of the fact that Amazon created this device. I'm definitely one of them.
Yeah.
100%. So yeah, it's definitely been the catalyst. I mean, the timing I think was actually good timing, really, because what else would have what else where would we be if that hadn't have existed? I don't think that kind of chatbots themselves would have gathered enough momentum if it wasn't for a good proportion of people that come from the Alexa sort of world and sort of said, "Look, we can make really, bring those skills into here." I mean, maybe
Hmm.
as it would, that's probably a bit of a stretch. I'm not saying that it wouldn't necessarily, but I think definitely for me personally, Alexa was a real catalyst, and I think it was for many others as well. So I think the timing was actually probably good. The challenge, we've documented the challenges on the podcast numerous times, regarding the closed platform, the discovery challenges, the monetization challenges, recurring or returning user challenges, all that kind of stuff is all still there. Um, but yeah, it's been, from a product standpoint, the first product that existed purposefully to speak to, and that's it, was actually pretty revolutionary.
Hmm.
And I think if it incorporates potentially some more of that, not generative stuff on the generation side, but a little bit more, kind of maybe some of that LLM technology on the understanding side, and galvanizes companies to be able to plug in their chatbots and voice assistants into the ecosystem, it still does have potential, I think, absolutely longer term. Um, if that's the way they decide to go.
Yeah, totally, totally. Um, Great stuff, Ken. So it's like, we're often having these chats behind closed doors. So I'm just thinking, what's the most useful thing for now that we're being recorded for other people to hear? Because, like, because you've been doing this 5 years, like, you are the brain that's been listening to so many people in the industry, and you've collected the most useful perspectives on everything. Um, so maybe a nice question just for you is, like, what inspires you to keep pushing forward?
Wow, that's a good question. I don't know, to be honest. I still, this stuff is aligned quite kind of closely to everything that I've always done throughout my whole life.
Mhm.
It's like one of those sort of like aha moments kind of thing. The voice side of things, you need to be able to design, you need to be able to write, you need to understand audio, you need to understand business and the business value it's gonna generate. All the things I've done since forever, basically, all kind of play a big role in this whole thing.
Yeah.
Um, and also, I genuinely like the whole content creation side of it as well, aside from the sort of consulting stuff. Like, I genuinely enjoy speaking to people. I enjoy learning new things. I enjoy creating those little videos with Winston. I enjoy writing those articles. Like, it's just that I just enjoy every single part of it. And over the last sort of year with you coming on board, and the team beginning to sort of establish itself and stuff like that, it's like that genuinely there is an absolutely fantastic group of people that I get the opportunity to work with every day, and the work itself I absolutely love. And so it's kind of those are the things I think now that keep me going. One is a deep interest still, and passion for this technology. I'm interested in where it goes. I'm interested in helping shape where it goes. I've got a huge passion for the benefits that it can bring, and I want to see that those benefits realized for customers and businesses all over the world. Um, and I love the people that I'm spending my time with. So it's yeah, that's what keeps me going.
Oh man, that was sweet. That was so nice. Well, yeah, it is an awesome team, and you built this. Like
We,
you.
I think the thing that is refreshing around all of this is that everyone that's involved is really passionate the same as I am around
Uh,
the technology, and I think that's the sort of that's what you want really. You want people who are kind of really passionate about the technology, believe in the technology, believe in the good that it can do, and really want to kind of affect people's lives and the interactions they have, affect the businesses that utilize it. um, and that's kind of what it is. And absolutely, even from day one, I was never really on my own. Dustin was hosting the podcast as well for the first kind of few years and stuff like that. He was really important and really instrumental. And everyone who's come on board over the last sort of year or two is just as, or if not more so, instrumental as well. So it's like, yeah, I hopefully like to think that we're sort of building this thing together, really. And I genuinely think that the opportunities for this technology are absolutely all around us. It's absolutely everywhere. And so yeah, it's a pleasure to be able to do this every day. It's amazing.
Amen. Amen to that. I think I need to let you go because I know your schedule and we've got meetings coming up.
Yeah.
So,
Well, maybe one final, maybe one question for you, back at you, would be, what kind of excites you about this industry, about this technology, and all that kind of stuff?
oh, thank you. Well, like there's a lot that you've said that I would definitely repeat. So I probably shouldn't, but same experience, and seeing the opportunities to work in my experience with audio, and even I think in terms of voice, we're still at the sort of point where people, we have SSML for text to speech, and it's kind of good enough for making an expressive voice, but really you can't go very far with it. And then there's these amazing advances like speech to speech, where it's so close to what I used to be doing with actors for, TV or film, where they were really expressing themselves as fully as possible, and now we can actually do that synthetically. It's utterly incredible. So that excites me. I think really, to try and sum it up when I know we've not got much time, it's really the fact that we're creating this ambient device that is a computer that, if it's a voice device, you can have that with you while you're doing lots of other stuff, you know? Like the fact, like as I'm talking to you now on my computer, this is pretty much my everything right now. This little box is containing, enough of my attention that I'm not aware of anything else. But if it's an ambient computer that I can talk to, I can be driving or out for a walk or doing something else where it's safe for me to be using a computer. And it can do so many things, I think, efficiently, as you're saying, with data, with the right connections, that this, like, it can really transform lives. It can make so many of the activities we do every day much more pleasurable and easier.
Mm,
And like to be involved in that, like working with lovely teams, great people like yourself, like that really excites me. It's I think we can. There's so much potential that's still to be realized, and yeah, I'm excited by that.
nice. Everything, I think everything fundamentally can be boiled down to a conversation, or at least an utterance that
Yeah.
can trigger something to get done. Um, And so, like, just think about all the things that you do on a daily basis. Every single app that you use, every website you use, every button that you click, every mouse that you swipe, every single thing could be. It's not necessarily that it would be the right application of the technology, but technically speaking, I think you could reduce everything to a conversational interface. Um, which is why it's so exciting, because that's where the opportunity is. That's where the possibilities are. It's in every single thing that you do, pretty much. Every time you touch a machine or computer or system of any description, there's an opportunity for a conversational interface there, which is, yeah, amazing.
It's mind blowing. So, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Thanks, Kane. Thanks. Firstly, thanks for this interview. Secondly, thanks because you're my boss, and I'm very much enjoying working with you. And thirdly, thanks for 5 years of VUX World.
thank you for having me on the show. Uh, it's good being on the other end of it, and genuinely, the Conversation Squared podcast has been an absolute kind of breath of fresh air,
Cool.
because we mentioned off air during the initial technical glitches that what's really great is that the conversational AI community, as growing as it is, there is so much talent in there that up until now has been just impossible to get round to everyone to have them on the show. And I think that what you're doing with the Conversation Squared podcast is fantastic, because it enables us to do a lot more, create a lot more content, and get to those people who've got talent and experience, and really valuable insights to share. We're able to do it, more regularly, which is great. Um, so if you haven't been on the Conversation Squared podcast and you want to chat conversation design, then reach out to Ben, definitely.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Please do. We want many more voices and perspectives on it. So I'm looking at my clock, and we're
Yeah,
due in a client meeting.
we are.
So we should
We better go.
probably wrap this up. So yeah, thanks so much, Kane. And yeah, amazing. 5 years of VUX World. That's an achievement. Well done.
Thank you, and thank you for joining us on the journey. And here's to five more and many more, hopefully.